voice of growth, mastering the mind and market. Welcome back to the Voice of Growth podcast, Mastering the Mind and Market. My name is Manny Teran, and I'm your host. Do not underestimate the power of understanding timing. Timing is crucial in deploying your vision. A lot of business folks think that effort equals immediate reward. That's simply not true. We've been conditioned over the past number of years, maybe a decade, to have this crazy idea that we put effort in and in a day or two or maybe a week, we get validation for that effort. That's simply not the case. If you think about social media, you put a video out, you put a post out, you get likes, you get comments, you get instant validation. And that does not necessarily equate to the way business actually operates. Business operates more in the agricultural cycles. The idea that we find some land, that we prepare the land, that we sow the seeds, we figure out what to grow and when to grow it. We plant the seeds, we water it, we fertilize it, we tend to it, and eventually we can cultivate and harvest what we planted. Some things are a quick turn. Some things we can cultivate in 3 months. Others take years. For instance, a walnut tree, I learned today, takes 15 years to bear its peak. And that's a long time. So there's two elements here that I want to discuss today. The first of which is the strategic side of timing. These are the long cycles. These are the things that are your vision over 3, 4, 5, 10 years down the road. What are you trying to build for yourself, for your family, for your business, for your community? These are the big rocks, if you will. Then on the other side is more the tactical timing. This is the trench warfare. This is the things that, like fighting fires. We all know people, you might be this person that's constantly fighting fires in their business. There's always things to put out. There's always this. Something always pops up. There's an email that pops up in the morning you got to deal with. And so when these things occur, there are certain elements that need to be taken in consideration because you don't want to run your business that way. On today's podcast, we're going to cover and talk about sort of elements of both. And I'm going to share with you some insights as to how you might look at the world so that you can actually take better command of this timing. I'll also take this opportunity to talk a little bit about this podcast and my role here. My role is not to give you advice. My role is to educate and inspire and provide insights. That's it. I got some feedback recently about the idea of, well, you're always giving advice. No one's asking for your advice. And you know what? No. We're here with this podcast. I'm sharing my experiences, my insights. My team works on behalf of creating an understanding of certain elements in business. We have a Stoic lens that we apply to all these things because I've learned in my life, in my career, that it's served me very well. We bring guests on as well that show their experiences, their life, and they're talking as from their perspective as a means to educate. And so that's the beauty of social media. You're going to be able to tune in to this, understand if it's useful for you. If it is, fantastic. If it isn't, fantastic. It's great either way. And there's a lot of things on social media today that are there and provide insights. And there's people that are talking smack. There's a lot of clickbait and things that are conspiracy theories and whatever. So irrespective of all that, I'm here because I believe that there is some value and service that we're providing to our audience. Just wanted to make that quick note based on some feedback I received recently. So let's talk about the two elements of this time that I mentioned. We'll start off with the idea that business is seasonal, even if you pretend that it's not. Whether it's market conditions, market cycles, whether it's business cycles, buying cycles, whether it's regulatory cycles, maybe it's things in your particular industry, growing cycles, maybe you're in the ag world. So there's certain cycles that you need to adhere to, and the better understanding you have of these cycles, the better for your business, your own personal endeavors. And when you understand that timing plays a crucial role, you'll begin to understand how you can apply principles that we talk about on this podcast and others in order to advance your vision to the next level. The mistake that a lot of folks make is that we plan as though these cycles remain the same. We plan as though there is a low, maybe a very low grade cycle, when in fact there is such volatility in all these markets I mentioned, whether it's the buying, the growing, the deployment cycles, there's things that happen at the government level, all these things at play. So when you actually apply the idea of the power of timing, you also need to understand a heavy dose of scenario planning. There's scenario planning involved. There's also the more Stoic idea that we can't control the cycles. We can only be tolerant and adjust our own self and our own processes, our own execution of whatever we're doing to adapt to those cycles. Let me bring it home a little bit with respect to the long game here and give you an example. Many businesses, when times are good, when there's money rolling in, where customers are buying and things are going well, there's this tendency to go out and spend. And revenue's up, demand's high, and you're spending. You're getting new things, you're giving bonuses, and you are seemingly growing. But there's a lot more power in the idea of holding back, waiting till there's another cycle where there's things that are downturn. Now you've got a couple things. You've got dry powder, meaning you have the ability to feed your family. You have the ability to give your employees a salary. You have the ability to pay your bills on time. You have the ability to buy things when the dollar or your money goes further. You have the ability to buy out your competitors. I've seen it happen both ways. And I've been sort of also party and leading companies that it happened both ways. In my younger years, times were great, so we're spending. And so I've seen situations where the market's up, people take that money and they put it away for a rainy day. Doesn't mean they don't invest, just means that they take a good portion of that and they put it away. So when the market turns, they've got that dry powder, they've got that war chest to go out and hire people that have been fired or let go by your competitors. You have the ability to negotiate. You're going to buy a $150,000 machine. Times are rough. You get on the horn with one of these companies. You say, listen, I understand you got this machine for sale. We got a quote 2 years ago for 150 grand. I believe that the offer will be 135,000. And so you have more leverage when you have that war chest during those soft times. So these elements are all part of the scenario planning and part of your strategic vision and application. Strategy is great, but unless it's actually applied and unless it's actually made real, it's just a word. Strong leaders do not confuse favorable conditions with a permanent reality. We understand that things change constantly. We understand that our vision is different than those of our team members. So figuring out a way to reduce bias when you have these conversations. If you're at the helm of your company, one of the smartest things you can do is have a meeting with your staff, ask some probing questions, and then listen. And you want to create a culture where your employees, your team members feel safe to share their unadulterated thoughts and perspectives. When you do that, when you create a culture where people are speaking their minds about the decisions of the company, and they understand that you as the leader are actually taking the time to listen, and even though you might go in a different direction, you at least acknowledge that perspective, and you even spend some resources to exploit it and look more deeply into it. Huge game changer in my book. When I created my creed, which I did a podcast a number of months ago about creed, One of those for the company creed was safety. The idea that my employees could freely speak their mind and share with the rest of us, hey, you know what? I see something here. I don't know. It feels weird. It looks weird. What's going on? And then we all jumped in and can figure out, okay, what's the actual truth here? And that saved our hide so many times. So let me go back into the discussions of preparing when times are good for times are bad. So a lot of this is about resources. And resources in the business domain come in many forms. Certainly capital is a big resource. Human resources, partnerships, government partnerships. You have the idea of vendor partnerships and having a brand grow. If you look at the big brands today, these top Fortune 50 companies, Fortune 100 companies, the Googles, the Microsofts, the Netflix of the world, if you carefully study when they started and how they grew in times where the rest of the economy was slowing down or rough, that's where a lot of these actually started. I started my company in 2000, at the end of 2009, going into 2010. The 2008 situation was in full swing by the time I started my company. And I took advantage of all these things I mentioned. I was able to hire two amazing engineers that at the time, one was delivering pizza and the other was working at a gas station. These are an optical engineer and the other one was an electrical engineer. I was able to bring them in and say, listen, I'm starting this new company. I can't pay you market rate just yet. Stay with me, work with me, and together, but by the way, I'll be able to pay you more than you make now. Stay with me, work with me, partner with me, and in no time, when the market shifts and we're actually in the right place at the right time, then I can bring you up back to market rate and we can actually begin to cook with gas as it is. So that happened. I can attest to it. A lot of power in it. We all know people that are seemingly lucky. They walk into these opportunities or they buy a house at the right time or whatever, and they're always getting these things. And we look at them like, all right, well, you got lucky. Well, if you think about luck, it's when opportunity meets preparation. When you are ready at the right time, that's when you're lucky. So I take that as a kind of a personal credo of when I look at how can I prepare myself for when these market conditions change, to be the lucky one, to be the one that's prepared and ready for when that opportunity steps through the door. It's happened to me. It's happened to some of my closest friends. And I ask you to think about in your life, how can you be preparing for whatever might be coming down the road? And we've talked about trends before. Trends are a very powerful, ever-present force in business, in life, that help to drive the direction we should be working to change our identity. We've talked about goals in the past, to accompany a leader that has the success that we want from the efforts of our vision. A couple of things I might also say is messaging. When it comes to messaging with respect to your business, if you are in the executive level, or if you even have a very small team, when you discuss and share with your team your vision, your grand vision, but then you also discuss how you actually intend to get there, and you're very clear that when there's going to be times of abundance, that you're going to be saving a lion's share of that for their future, then they'll begin to understand that you have their best interest in mind. Not to say you're not going to be giving raises or actually investing when you do have the capital, but keeping some for reserves, it helps with so many elements. I don't know about you, but when you make decisions, when you're in a place of lack, when your company, I remember years ago, I had my company and there was a few moments where cash flow and accounts payable, accounts receivable, all kind of conspired against me as the owner of the company. I felt as though like the timing, quote unquote, was just such that I didn't know if I was going to make payroll. There was one time when we got really close, and there was another time where we actually did go negative, and I had to write a personal check to cover payroll. And that was not a popular idea with my wife at the time. So we made it happen, and we got through it all. But that was one of the hard lessons I learned about when to save, when to spend, how to manage the idea of timing. And we do these things, especially I do these things now out of sheer experiences. The idea of saving and working with timing correctly really ties down back to the Stoic principles. Tolerance is one of the 4 virtues. Tolerance means that you don't go out there and you just spend all your money, or you don't blow it on some new thing you want to bring into your shop, or some new machine, or you want to hire that hot shot or whatever. Not to say you don't do it in a measured way, but at least have the idea of when things are soft, when the market is down, how will you be able to fund your operation? I'm a huge proponent of glass half full. I mean, I'm like always very optimistic about business. I've had so many near misses that I just see things maybe differently than most. But I have people around me, my team members, that are cautious. They are more operators. They look at what are the risks? What could happen here? And I could be a brash, ego-driven, bravado kind of guy and just go a different direction. But no, I take the time, I listen, and I make sure that I understand that that's their perspective, and it's my bias and my ego that's holding me back. So I'm going to take some time to actually internalize these things and look at how their perspective might add value down the road. So great leaders aren't just decisive, we're also patient. We understand when to push, when to pull, when to conserve, when to strike, when to open up to the market, when to recede into design mode. These things come with time. They come with wisdom based on experience. They come with communication and talking with people. I've spoken many times about vulnerability and why it's so important to at least open up to your inner circle. And if you don't have a board of directors officially, have an unofficial board of directors. I myself have people in my circle that vehemently do not agree with me most of the time. Politically, how they run their business. And as frustrating as it is sometimes talking with them, I take a break. I take a breath. I go in there and I listen to them. I absorb it. I try not to be defensive. I lean on those Stoic principles as much as I can. And at the end of that, I take what they shared with me as a very strong, unbiased perspective of how I might look at taking my business. Doesn't mean that I follow it. I probably follow it 10% of the time, but at least that I'm aware of it, so that as I'm deploying my strategy, my vision into strategy, into execution and process and making it happen, I can keep their perspective in mind to make any adjustments or to look at what might be around the corner. A lot of this comes from a certain level of pattern recognition. It comes from emotional control, and it comes from detachment from our egos. There's this myth about leadership, that leadership is a hammer, that leadership is loud, that leadership is a roaring fire, when in fact, leadership is soft, is kind, is quiet, it's decisive, but it's also patient. These are elements that I've learned over the years, and as I've interviewed so many people and actually with intent studied this, it's one of the things I've learned about leadership. The best way to lead is by example. The situations where you don't maybe have the ability to lead by example, you allow the space that people around you need in order to grow into that space. You provide guardrails. I really like the idea of guardrails. I'm not the kind of leader that is going to have a tight leash on people that work for me and with me. I'm going to instead provide guardrails. This is your area of opportunity, of focus. And if you fall, I've got you. But make sure that you try not to fall. It's the idea here that you want to give them the empowerment to make these decisions, but also the accountability that if their decisions are wrong, they own it, but without the fear of getting fired. It is a harmonious situation that needs to be put in place, in my belief, in order to create the kind of company you want. And when you're operating in this way, there is peace, joy, happiness, abundance. Not to say you're not going to have the moments that are difficult or hard to go through, but ultimately there's a certain peace that comes with this. I've worked in almost 25 years in the market, which sounds ridiculous. From my early years to now is a huge difference. I have people in my circle that are half my age that are executing at these high levels. And I know people that are 25 years older than me that are still struggling with getting off the ground. We all have our own journey. And in my opinion, it's up to us as leaders to help pave a way, shine a light, give insights, and share with them ways that they can actually create some momentum and be in a dynamic motion towards getting to the place they want to get to. There are three practical questions. These are grounded questions I want to ask you to ask yourselves. The first of which is, what season is my business in? Not just the ones we think it might be or what we hope it might be, but what are the seasons that our business is in? And I wanted you to think about seasons from all levels. I want you to think about this agricultural sort of idea that some plants don't grow well in the summer. Some plants take 6 months to cultivate. Some plants take years. Some plants take a lot of water. Some plants take very little water. So use the same thing in your own business. In your business, what is the market cycle that is at play here? Are there any regulatory issues that will slow down or speed up your company? Are there grants? Are there government issues? Who is the 800-pound gorilla that can derail you? What can happen if you are on the front page of the Wall Street Journal? And so all these elements, like think outside the box. My former business partner, Adam Hartung, his saying was, get out of the box, then think. So that really blew my mind when I heard that, because if we're thinking outside the box, we're kind of still in the box. Get out of the box. Get in a place where bias is left at the front door. It's hard to deal with sometimes, and I've done things when I was with Spark Partners regarding bias, and I'm actually going to do another one here soon regarding the power and the detrimental effect of bias, the power of understanding bias and the detrimental effect of bias, so that you can use that as a playbook yourself to create a more clear vision of what is really happening without bringing ego, without bringing all your baggage to the table. The second question is, what seeds am I planting today that won't pay off in 6, 12, 18, 24, and 72 months? So I want to create some plot here of what are you doing now that won't actually turn up any fruit for these periods of time? By doing so, it gives you a better idea of where you should be spending your time. If you're constantly just working in the business, you are turning the crank and you're making the monkey dance around and that's all you're doing, you're never going to really get to that place where you have that massive abundance. But instead, you spend some time working on the business and as well as in the business, because you still have to make a living. But if you work on the business, what is it it's going to take for you to get to that next level? What is a new product that you're going to create that'll take your revenues and triple them in 24 months? What is that? Who's the organization out there that can derail you? I mentioned that earlier. These are all questions that need to be asked in order for you to create that momentum you need. And the last question I want you to ask yourself is number 3, what resource am I consuming now that I should be conserving? Is that cash? Is that some cogs you've got? Is it human resources? Are you spending your political capital where you should be conserving it? These are all elements that are going to be important when there's a downturn or when there's an opportunity to really strike. I've seen just recently a situation where a particular company they're in a space that's being heavily regulated right now. I'll just say that. And they were actually able to buy their competitor because of the fact that they had a war chest of money. They weren't owned by a giant corporation. This is a small company, but they were actually able to buy their biggest competitor because their competitor was bought by a bigger company and they didn't meet the guidelines they had from the parent company. So they wanted to divest. And they divested. This other company came in, picked them up, was able to not quite double the revenue, but pretty close. And now they have all the resources. Now they have this team that also has its own set of market intelligence. And so I'm happy to report that they're just kicking ass. I mean, they're just killing it right now because they had the resources. When times were great 4 years ago, they saved up some money, they invested it. And when this came to pass 6 months ago, boom, they made it happen. So to close out, think about timing as a secret weapon in being able to deploy your vision into the world. There's lots of other resources you can go to. There's certainly just conversations you can have with trusted people, friends or board members. Talk about, hey, listen, what do you think about we do this? Or what could actually, what is a resource we're spending too much right now that we should conserve? Like, bring these things out and have an open conversation and be ready to hear whatever criticism you might hear. Take a step back, take a breath, take a break, and then go back and figure out with your team how you're going to use that to your advantage. Thanks for listening today. I wish you the best. Cheers.